When Alexander openly suggested meeting in a hotel room, Nadezhda responded with a shrug, saying, "If you just want to have fun, that's fine, but I'm done playing emotional games." And so, they began meeting up at hotels, purely to satisfy each other's needs. Alexander didn't even think twice about leaving a tip for her once their time together was over. Hi there, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life story. This time, our journey takes us to the city of Burgos, Bulgaria. This crime story is not only unique but also thought-provoking, guaranteed to pique your curiosity. The twists and turns of this case even sparked heated debates among netizens over the final verdict. The story itself is simple yet unsettling, and honestly, a little strange. If you've heard of cases where a husband's life ended tragically due to his wife's actions, this one feels eerily similar, but with a twist that's hard not to pity. So, what's the full story behind this peculiar case? Let's dive in and explore it together. Before we get into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, share this story with your friends. It's too interesting to keep to yourself. So, here's how it all started. Alexander, born in 1994, was a university graduate from the city of Burgos. After finishing his studies, he worked as a machinist for a while before teaming up with two friends to start a business selling men's t-shirts and hoodies. Lively, fun, and full of charm, Alexander was the kind of guy people gravitated toward. With his good looks and smooth talk, he had no trouble winning over women. His confidence and charisma left many girls swooning, and he didn't shy away from playing the field. For Alexander, love was simple. Try things out, and if it worked, great. If not, move on to the next. When the pandemic hit in 2020, Alexander found himself with a lot of free time at home. To stay active, he joined an online fitness class hosted by a local gym. The app let him choose a personal trainer, and naturally, he picked the most attractive one available, Nadezhda, a 39-year-old widow and popular trainer. The online sessions, twice a week, started off as purely professional. But as time passed, Alexander and Nadezhda began exchanging phone numbers, chatting outside of class, and building a connection. By early 2021, when things began returning to normal, they decided to meet in person to hang out and work out together. Now, Alexander was used to charming women with ease, but Nadezhda was different. Having been married twice, she saw right through his smooth moves. Alexander tried everything, but his charm wasn't enough to win her over emotionally. Then, Alexander decided to be direct. He suggested meeting at a hotel room for a date. Nadezhda didn't shy away. "If you just want to have fun, that's fine," she said. "But don't expect me to fall for you. I'm done with all that heart game nonsense." And so, they began meeting in hotel rooms purely for casual fun, no strings attached. Alexander didn't even hesitate to leave her tips afterward, treating the encounters like a playful transaction. By April 2021, when the fitness center reopened, Alexander's attention had shifted. This time, he was drawn to one of the personal trainers who also happened to be Nadezhda's best friend, a 35-year-old woman named Valina. Like Nadezhda, Valina was a widow, but she had one child who lived with her parents in the city of Atos. Valina was stunning, sexy, and incredibly friendly, which only added to her appeal. Alexander couldn't hide his interest and even asked Nadezhda a few times, "Can I switch my personal trainer to Valina?" Nadezhda didn't mind. Intrigued by his curiosity and perhaps a bit amused, she said, "Go for it. You can even use your paid sessions to make the switch." Soon enough, Valina took over as Alexander's trainer. They worked out together, lifting weights, sweating side by side, and sneaking in casual health consultations between sets. Alexander tried his usual charm, but despite Valina's flirtatious and sensual energy, she never agreed to his hotel date suggestions. It wasn't that Valina wasn't interested, she was. But she wasn't the type to jump into something casual. For her, a relationship needed to come first, and if things got serious, maybe marriage before anything happened in the bedroom. This frustrated Alexander, and he confided in Nadezhda about it. She simply shrugged and said, "Not all women are looking for casual fun. Why don't you try dating her? Who knows, it might actually work out." Valina, meanwhile, had once told Nadezhda that she liked Alexander. So Nadezhda encouraged him, saying, "Just go for it, she likes you too." By June 2021, after about 6 weeks of getting to know each other and going on dates, Alexander and Valina officially became a couple. Interestingly, Valina had no idea about Alexander's past hotel rendezvous with Nadezhda. To her, their relationship was strictly professional, just a trainer and her client. Long story short, within just 3 weeks of dating, Valina had completely fallen for Alexander. The guy was a smooth operator, no doubt about it. Alexander knew exactly how to win her heart. Romantic words, surprise gifts like flowers and pocket money, her favorite food delivered out of the blue, and late-night calls just to say he missed and loved her. He even went as far as hanging a banner on her door that read, "Valina, I love you." Valina felt like a queen in Alexander's world, and despite the 9-year age gap, she couldn't wait for him to propose. Even Nadezhda believed that Alexander was head over heels for her best friend. After all, he'd stopped asking her to meet up at hotels, so it seemed like he was truly in love with Valina. Nadezhda was hopeful that their love story would soon lead to a wedding. Alexander's efforts paid off. After a little over a month of dating, Valina agreed to a romantic dinner at a hotel restaurant. The night only got better from there. Alexander booked a room, and during their evening together, he slipped a diamond ring onto Valina's finger. She was so overwhelmed that her jaw dropped. That night, she decided to give Alexander her all, trusting that she'd soon be his wife. The couple stayed at the hotel for 2 nights, and during that time, Alexander made her feel like the center of his universe. He didn't even touch his phone, instead spending hours gazing into her eyes, singing romantic songs, and showering her with love. Valina shared every detail with Nadezhda the next day, blushing as she gushed about how special Alexander had made her feel. Her best friend couldn't have been happier for her and wished them all the best. But just a week after that romantic getaway, Alexander seemed to vanish. He stopped coming to the gym, his phone number was inactive, and there was no sign of him anywhere. Concerned, Valina asked Nadezhda to go with her to Alexander's t-shirt shop in early August 2021. When they arrived, one of his co-workers dropped a bombshell. Alexander was in Romania visiting another girlfriend. He'd been gone for 3 days, and no one knew when he'd be back. Valina was heartbroken and in disbelief. Determined to get answers, the 2 women tracked down Alexander's home address. He lived with his stepbrother Kirill, along with Kirill's wife and child. When they spoke with Kirill, they discovered another shocking truth. Alexander already had a girlfriend, a doctor named Relitsa. Kirill, sensing Valina's distress, gave her another phone number for Alexander, saying, "If his main number isn't working, try this one." But every call to the new number was rejected, and even calls from Kirill's phone went unanswered. In the end, Valina left her number with Kirill's wife, Svetlana, asking her to let Alexander know to call her when he returned. Heartbroken and confused, Valina could only wait for answers she might never get. For the next month, Valina was a wreck. She couldn't shake the sadness and frustration of realizing she'd been played by a younger man. Alexander had used her, and all those romantic gestures had only been a ploy to win her trust and take what he wanted. She broke down crying several times in Nadezhda's arms, but nothing seemed to help. Valina couldn't stop herself from calling or texting the number Kirill had given her, even though it was often ignored. Once, Alexander accidentally picked up and casually said, "I'll call you later, maybe I pressed it by mistake," before hanging up. Her messages were always marked as read but never replied to. This only made her angrier, and she started fantasizing about confronting Alexander and giving him a piece of her mind, or maybe even slapping him. In November 2021, Kirill called Valina with some news. Alexander was getting married soon. The wedding would likely be held in Romania, and if Valina wanted, she could go to the address they'd sent and confront him before the reception. Valina, however, wasn't interested in causing a scene. Instead, She asked Kirill to meet up and explain everything in person. Kirill agreed, and they met at the fitness center where Valina and Nadezhda worked. He confirmed the wedding plans. Alexander was set to marry in March 2022, just 4 months away. Seeing Valina's sadness tugged at Kirill's heart. A week later, just before New Year's, Valina invited him to meet again. This time, just the two of them. Over time, their meetings became more frequent. Kirill, 32 years old and married, felt a strange urge to comfort her. What began as a shoulder to cry on evolved into something more intimate. He started visiting Valina at her rental house, where their conversations sometimes turned into moments of vulnerability, and eventually, into physical comfort. Nadezhda began to notice. She grew suspicious after catching Valina on a video call with Kirill, smiling like someone falling in love. Nadezhda warned her, "You're playing with fire. He has a wife and kids. Don't drag innocent people into this just because you're hurt. Revenge isn't the answer." But Valina dismissed her concerns. "He's just comforting me," she replied. "I'm not trying to get revenge or anything. It's just two friends talking. What's wrong with that?" Nadezhda wasn't convinced. When she pushed further, Valina lashed out. "You're a hypocrite," she snapped. "Don't think I don't know you used to go to hotels with Alexander. I saw your texts on his phone. You two had your fun in hotel rooms. Why didn't you warn me that he was a playboy? Did you stay quiet on purpose? Or was this some kind of setup to mess with me? Were you both in on it?" Nadezhda, stunned by her friend's outburst, said nothing. She didn't want to escalate things further. After that confrontation, their friendship fell apart. They stopped speaking to each other, avoided interactions, and went their separate ways. On the night of February 1, 2022, Valina and Kirill planned to meet at his rental house for a quiet evening together. Valina intended to stay overnight since Kirill's wife and children had already left for Romania to prepare for Alexander's wedding. Kirill, staying behind to finish work, would join them closer to the reception date. That night, Kirill went all out. He brought along some performance-enhancing drugs and a special liquid, promising Valina it would make their night unforgettable. For context, Kirill was slim and stood about 5 feet 6 inches, 168 centimeters, while Valina, taller at 5 feet 8 inches, 174 centimeters, had a bigger build. The evening started with casual conversation and escalated to a passionate encounter. However, at around 2 a.m., Valina suddenly called an ambulance. Kirill was convulsing, pale, and unresponsive. He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors worked on him for over an hour, but sadly, they couldn't save him. The official announcement was heartbreaking. Kirill had passed away during his romantic night with Valina. As news spread, Kirill's wife, Svetlana, immediately returned from Romania. Alexander and other family members also arrived to support her. When questioned by police, Valina explained that Kirill had likely overdosed on the substances he consumed. She admitted trying them for the first time that night at his suggestion. Medical tests did confirm a high amount of the drugs in Kirill's system, but the doctors ruled out overdose as the cause of death. Instead, it was determined that Kirill had died from asphyxiation. His breathing was severely restricted. This raised further questions, as there were no handprints or physical marks on Kirill's neck. The police began to suspect that Valina might have used a pillow to smother him, possibly due to her alleged grudge against Alexander. However, Valina adamantly denied this, insisting that she hadn't done anything malicious. To clarify matters, Valina's lawyer requested a re-examination of the scene. Investigators inspected the room, the mattress, and the pillows. Surprisingly, there was no evidence to suggest a pillow had been used to smother Kirill. There were no traces of saliva or other signs of suffocation on the pillow, and footage from nearby surveillance cameras confirmed that Valina had not left the house from the time Kirill arrived until the ambulance was called. So what caused Kirill's breathing difficulties? This is where Valina made a shocking confession. She explained that during their intense lovemaking, Kirill had requested that she press her chest against his face. She obliged, not realizing she had been pressing down too hard. When Kirill began convulsing, she thought it was a sign of pleasure and continued, unaware that he was actually struggling to breathe. In reality, Kirill was desperately trying to push her away, but she misunderstood his movements. By the time she noticed something was wrong, it was too late. Kirill had gone limp and pale. Panicked, Velina tried to wake him, but he was unresponsive, prompting her to call for help. For almost an hour, Kirill remained unresponsive, sending Velina into a full-blown panic. Desperate, she finally called an ambulance. She insisted later that it was never her intention to harm Kirill. What happened was a tragic accident, completely unforeseen. She even pointed out that Kirill's smaller, thinner frame compared to hers might have contributed to what happened. However, in court, Kirill's wife, Svetlana, didn't hold back her fury. She accused Velina of planning the entire thing, claiming it was all part of a scheme to get revenge on Alexander. Svetlana blamed Alexander too, calling him responsible for her husband's death. The family was convinced that Velina, heartbroken over Alexander's upcoming wedding, had seduced Kirill to exact her revenge and then deliberately caused his death. To make matters worse for Velina, Nadezhda was called to testify. She painted a very different picture of her former friend. Nadezhda told the court that Velina wasn't the type to engage in casual relationships, especially not without love or marriage. She even mentioned that Velina had refused to fully commit to Alexander, someone she once loved deeply. According to Nadezhda, Velina must have acted out of bitterness and disappointment after learning about Alexander's engagement. Velina, however, repeatedly denied these accusations. She explained that she genuinely liked Kirill because he had been a calming presence during one of the lowest points in her life. He made her feel at peace when she was heartbroken, and their intimacy wasn't born out of revenge. It was a connection she had willingly embraced. She insisted she had no intention of harming him, describing Kirill as a refreshing source of comfort for her troubled soul. Despite her defense, the court thought otherwise. On August 5, 2022, the Burgos Regional High Court found Velina guilty of intentionally and premeditatedly causing Kirill's death by smothering him with her chest. The 36-year-old was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with no leniency. The verdict left no one satisfied. Kirill's family had hoped for a life sentence, believing justice demanded harsher punishment. Meanwhile, Velina and her lawyer filed an appeal a month later, insisting the entire incident was a tragic accident. In the end, the court upheld its decision, and Velina had no choice but to accept the ruling. As for Alexander, he faced no consequences for his role in Velina's heartbreak and subsequent downfall, leaving many to wonder if justice had truly been served. What lessons can we learn from this story? You can comment below.